the LPGA didn't hesitate. When Caitlin Clark stepped onto the course at the 2025 Onica Pro-Am, they rolled out the red carpet, turning her appearance into a marketing triumph. While broadcasters, fans, and fellow golfers shared behind-the-scenes content and praised her involvement, the WNBA offered silence, and in some corners, subtle disdain. Aya Wilson.
If you're here for the real story and not the filtered version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe.
Players like Aya Wilson sent passive-aggressive messages, framing Clark's success as a threat rather than a win for all. It wasn't just a missed opportunity. It was a revealing moment of contrast between two vastly different visions for women's sports. The LPGA's embrace of Clark fueled a historic spike in engagement, proving how star athletes can attract new fans and elevate a sports profile when celebrated instead of sidelined. In contrast, the WNBA's guarded, envious response sends the wrong message about unity and growth. This divergence lays bare the high stakes of how leagues choose to treat breakout talent, and how that choice can either drive momentum or stall it entirely. Aya Wilson. Caitlin Clark showed up to the 2025 Onica Pro-Am, swung a few golf clubs, smiled for cameras, and just like that, she broke the internet again. But what really broke was the mask. The mask that some in the WNBA had been wearing, pretending to support women's sports unity, while quietly resenting any woman who threatens their spotlight. And the contrast in how the LPGA and the WNBA handled Caitlin's appearance? It couldn't be louder if it had its own halftime show. On one side, you had the LPGA practically throwing a welcome parade. They didn't just allow Caitlin Clark to participate, they made her the moment. Behind-the-scenes clips, smiling group shots, excited social posts, interviews. They saw the value, they saw the momentum, and they leaned in hard. And it worked. The numbers skyrocketed. Social media engagement went through the roof. New fans tuned in. Interest in women's golf hit levels it hadn't touched in years. Not because Caitlin Clark is a golfer, but because the LPGA understood that she's a magnet. And instead of fighting it, they leveraged it. Now flip the screen. The WNBA's reaction, or lack thereof. That silence was deafening. Official channels were dead quiet. No congratulatory posts. No acknowledgement. Just avoidance. And in that vacuum, the whispers started. Then the side eyes. Then the subtweets. Aya Wilson, one of the league's biggest stars, posted cryptic commentary clearly targeting the outsized media attention Caitlin was receiving. The tone? Not celebratory. Not strategic. Just salty. It didn't stop there. Several players added to the pile, liking tweets, sharing media bias hot takes, or vaguely bemoaning the way certain players get everything handed to them. All without naming Caitlin directly. But let's not pretend it was about anyone else. When one name is lighting up ESPN, Twitter, TikTok, and a golf tournament, and your league's top players start suddenly discussing unearned hype, it's not subtle. It's insecurity with a Wi-Fi connection. And here's the thing. It wasn't just a bad look. It was a missed opportunity. A huge one. The LPGA didn't lose anything by celebrating. Their own stars didn't get pushed aside. They stood next to her, and they benefited. Every camera on Caitlin was also catching Nelly Korda. Nelly Korda and other LPGA names smiling and sharing the moment. That's how cross-promotion works. That's how sports grow. You don't just build one name, you build momentum around the entire movement. The WNBA had the same opportunity. A player from their own league participating in a major televised event with a massive media footprint? That's marketing gold. A chance to get new eyeballs on a brand. To redirect curiosity toward their upcoming games. To remind people that women's basketball is where Caitlin Clark came from. But instead of capitalizing, they froze. Then flinched. Then fumbled. And it wasn't just a mistake. It was revealing. Because this wasn't the first time Caitlin Clark has been treated like a problem. Since entering the league, she's been polarizing. Not for her behavior. Not for anything she's done. But because her success is inconvenient to the narrative that no one player should outshine the collective. But that narrative is tired. Athletes do outshine. It's literally how leagues grow. Serena Williams, Serena outshone the WTA. Simone Biles. Simone outshone gymnastics. Megan Rapinoe. Megan outshone the NWSL. That's not a flaw. That's marketing. It doesn't mean you don't support the rest of the league. It means you're smart enough to recognize a spotlight when you see one, and you position everyone else to benefit from the overflow. The LPGA got it. The WNBA didn't. Even worse, the WNBA's passive-aggressive reaction sent a message to casual fans who were just arriving. If you love Caitlin Clark, maybe this league doesn't love you back. That's not just bad optics, that's a brand problem. And to be clear, Caitlin did nothing to deserve the blowback. She didn't brag. She didn't dunk on anyone, metaphorically or literally. She didn't demand attention. She showed up with humility, played her part, supported a charitable cause, and still got dragged for being too visible. Which brings us to the core issue, visibility. Because what's really being punished here is the fact that Caitlin Clark makes headlines just by existing. And in a space where visibility is scarce, some players seem to think that one person's spotlight means everyone else gets left in the dark. But the truth is, the spotlight expands when the narrative is shared. Caitlin Clark's popularity doesn't mean less for others. It means more potential attention for everyone if the league knows how to use it. That's what the LPGA did. They tapped into Caitlin's popularity and amplified it. The result? The most successful media moment women's golf has seen in years. They didn't hoard the spotlight. They turned it into a floodlight. Meanwhile, the WNBA holed up in silence and let bitterness drive the response. And they didn't just squander a strategic moment. They showed their hand. They revealed a culture that isn't quite ready to embrace crossover wins unless the right people are winning. That's dangerous, because women's sports don't get moments like this often. Moments that break the bubble, that bring in viewers who don't usually watch, that trend outside the sports world. Caitlin's presence at a golf event was one of those rare, culture-shifting moments. And while one league seized it, the other side scrolled Twitter, liked a shady post, and pretended nothing was happening. It's not just a bad decision. It's a philosophical failure. Because if your league can't cheer when your own player is bringing global attention to women's sports, then what exactly are you building? If your culture punishes success when it's not evenly distributed, you're not growing. You're gatekeeping. And gatekeeping never grows a sport. It just makes the circle smaller. What the LPGA showed us is that it's possible to embrace a transcendent athlete without losing sight of everyone else. You can uplift one without dragging the others down. That's the kind of thinking that leads to real progress, sponsorships, broadcast deals, fan expansion. That's how you shift culture. Not by subtweeting your way through someone else's moment, but by celebrating it like it's yours too. Because it is yours. When women win in one arena, it elevates the whole movement. The LPGA saw that. The WNBA didn't. And unless that changes, the league risks turning away the very people it claims to represent. New fans, new players, young girls looking for something to believe in. You can't build a welcoming, inclusive league with resentment in the driver's seat. You need vision. You need humility. And most of all, you need to know the difference between competition and collaboration. The question now is, has the WNBA learned anything from this? Because Caitlin Clark isn't going anywhere. She's not going to stop trending. She's not going to stop drawing crowds. And she's certainly not going to apologize for being popular. The only thing left to decide is whether the WNBA is going to keep fighting her success or finally realize it's the best thing that's happened to them in years. So what do you think? Did the WNBA blow it by staying silent? Is the LPGA's model the blueprint for women's sports success? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Like if you're tired of leagues gatekeeping their own growth. Share this if you think women's sports deserve better than bitterness. And hit subscribe. We've got more stories coming that cut through the spin and call out the chaos. Caitlin Clark didn't show up to make anyone feel small. She didn't hijack the moment. She didn't puff out her chest or throw subtle digs. She brought her clubs, smiled, hit some shots, posed for pictures, and let her presence speak for itself. That's all. And somehow, That presence alone was enough to trigger a full-on identity crisis in the WNBA. Because make no mistake, that's what this is. An identity crisis. The LPGA embraced Caitlyn's crossover moment as a unifying celebration. The WNBA responded like a sibling watching the younger child get praised at dinner. Crossed arms, tight-lipped, and seething. But unlike family dinners, this one was televised, and everyone saw the reaction. Caitlyn's participation in the 2025 Annika Pro-Am wasn't just a novelty. It was a turning point. A moment that challenged the status quo. A moment that revealed which leagues were ready for growth and which were still gatekeeping it. And the irony? The WNBA should have been the loudest voice in the room, cheering her on. She is their player. She's wearing their jersey. She's on their roster. But instead of saying, "That's our girl," they said nothing. Instead of posting clips and basking in the shared glow of her cultural reach, they let insecurity do the talking. Not through press releases or statements, but through Twitter fingers and snide timing. Instead of seizing the moment, they resented it. And people noticed. Because when a league stays silent while one of its own is helping raise the tide, it sends a message. We only celebrate you if you don't eclipse us. That message is dangerous. And not just for Caitlyn, but for every rising star behind her. Because if the precedent is that you can only succeed quietly, what are we even doing? How can we claim to want growth in women's sports if we tear down the very people driving that growth? Caitlyn's influence isn't accidental. It's earned. She broke records. She filled arenas. She brought men's sports fans into women's arenas. That kind of crossover is rare. It's valuable. It should be harnessed, not hidden. What the LPGA did was textbook success. They brought her in, put her front and center with their stars, not instead of them, and let the synergy do the work. Their athletes gained exposure. Their events got mainstream attention. Their sports saw a viewership spike that would have cost millions in ad spend to manufacture otherwise. That's not luck. That's strategy. And what makes the WNBA's misstep so glaring is that they've needed this kind of moment. For years, they've been pushing for more visibility, more marketing, more media attention, and they deserve it. But when it finally arrives, not through the front door, but by a different route, they didn't just hesitate, they rejected it. Not officially, but clearly. The players who shaded Caitlyn, they didn't do it out of nowhere. Their resentment wasn't born that week. It's been building because deep down, some of them don't think her shine is deserved. They see her media coverage, her nil deals, the fanfare, and they think, I've been here longer. Where's my moment? It's an understandable feeling, but it's the wrong mindset. Because success isn't redistributed, it's expanded. Caitlyn getting coverage doesn't take it from someone else. In fact, the more eyes on Caitlyn, the more chances other players have to step into that light. To be discovered, to be Googled, to trend. But that only works if you play the game. The LPGA played. The WNBA didn't. They chose bitterness over branding, ego over elevation. And it showed. This isn't about loyalty. It's about leadership. The WNBA had a chance to lead by example, to show that women's leagues can support each other, lift each other, grow together. That Caitlyn Clark's rise wasn't just hers. It was theirs too. Instead, they looked at her like an intruder, like a threat to the balance. That's not just disappointing. It's a strategic failure. Caitlyn doesn't need defending. Her success speaks for itself. But the fact that she was ignored by her own league, while celebrated by another one, that's the real story. And it raises an uncomfortable question. If the WNBA can't support their own most visible player, what does that say about how they'll treat the next one? Because make no mistake, there will be a next one. Another breakout star. Another name that the media loves, that fans follow, that advertisers want. And if the WNBA repeats this cycle of resentment and silence every time a player gets too bright, then it's not Caitlyn that's the problem. It's the culture. You can't build an empire if you're afraid of kings and queens. And this isn't just about players. It's about leadership at the top. Where were the league voices amplifying this moment? Where were the reposts? The interviews? The spin? Caitlyn Clark is one of the most talked about athletes in America. Her appearance at any event could, and did, move the needle. But instead of riding the wave, the WNBA sat on their hands and let the LPGA take the win. And take it they did. They set the tone. They reaped the benefits. And they sent a message not just to Caitlin, but to every future athlete. Come here and we'll celebrate you. Come here and we'll put your name in lights. Meanwhile, the WNBA looks like it's still stuck choosing between pride and progress. The fans see it. The sponsors see it. The media sees it. This moment should have been about unity, about women's sports, showing the world that they can rally around each other, not tear each other down, that they understand the value of visibility, of momentum, of shared wins. But instead, the spotlight split into two beams, one shining on the LPGA, the other exposing cracks in the WNBA's foundation. And now the question isn't whether Caitlin Clark can handle the pressure. It's whether the league she plays for can. Because right now, it looks like they're not just fumbling a star, they're fumbling a generation. Every young athlete watching sees the message. Play your part, but don't shine too bright. Be successful, but don't out-succeed. Fit in, don't stand out. That's not how you build legacy. That's how you lose it. The LPGA gave a masterclass in how to handle stardom. They embraced it. They planned around it. They turned Caitlin's name into a rising tide that lifted everyone. The WNBA, on the other hand, acted like they were threatened by their own reflection. There's still time to fix it, to change course, to show that this league can evolve, support, lead. But that starts with ditching the jealousy and recognizing that one player's moment can be the league's too, if they let it. Here's the thing. The WNBA has spent years demanding more media attention, more coverage, more money. And that fight has been valid. Women's sports deserve the investment, the airtime, the prime slots. But when Caitlin Clark delivers all of that without the league lifting a finger, when she drags in headlines, boosts ratings, and brings in a brand new fan base, the silence becomes deafening. It's no longer about what they don't have. It's about what they won't embrace. Let's be brutally honest. This league was not prepared for Caitlin Clark's arrival. Not culturally, not strategically, not emotionally. It's one thing to say you want visibility. It's another thing to handle it when it comes attached to someone who eclipses the narrative you thought you were writing. And the WNBA? They weren't ready for someone who could bring more attention in a day than the league's marketing team has in a year. The LPGA, though, they understood the assignment. They didn't just make room for, they highlighted her. They understood that when someone like her shows up, she brings more than talent. She brings a spotlight. And when you're smart, you don't block that spotlight. You widen it. You let it shine on everyone. The numbers back it up. Her appearance at the Annika Pro AM sparked the biggest social media engagement women's golf had seen in years. New eyes on the game. New fans asking questions. New momentum that everybody in the LPGA benefited from. That's what happens when you understand how to play the long game. That's what happens when you see star power as a tool, not a threat. Now look back at the WNBA's response. Passive-aggressive posts, veiled complaints, awkward interviews, and cold silence. Not even a half-hearted repost. Not even a go-get-him comment from the league's own channels. And that silence spoke volumes. It told the world that success in this space is conditional. It told players, fans, and sponsors that there's an invisible cap on how big you're allowed to get before it makes everyone else uncomfortable. That's not how a league grows. That's how a league alienates. Because what happens the next time an athlete breaks out? Will they be welcomed, or will they be warned to stay in line? What message does that send to the next Caitlin Clark or the next generational talent waiting to explode onto the scene? That you can be great, but not too great? That your rise has to come with an apology? That mindset isn't just damaging, it's regressive. And it hurts everyone. What the WNBA should have done was simple. Acknowledge the moment. Celebrate it. Use Caitlin's appearance in golf to draw attention back to basketball. Drop a clip. Post a quote. Say something. Make a crossover event. Lean into the attention instead of treating it like a virus you hope passes quietly. The league had a cultural moment on their hands. One of their own was breaking the mold, going viral, reaching demographics who've never paid attention to women's sports before. That's not a problem. That's a gift. And yet, it felt like they wanted it to be over. It's not just about ego. It's about strategy. Because women's sports don't get this kind of free publicity very often. The fact that Caitlin Clark can cause a media frenzy without even playing basketball is a level of cultural capital that leagues dream about. But instead of capitalizing on it, the WNBA treated it like a problem to manage. It's a pattern now, not just with Caitlin, but with how women's sports treat transcendent success. There's a ceiling, and when someone breaks through it, there's tension. Instead of seeing stars as the rising tide, some see them as competition. And that scarcity mindset is exactly what's keeping women's sports from growing at the pace it deserves. The LPGA proved the opposite. They showed that when you lift someone up, it lifts everyone. That celebrating someone else's moment doesn't take away from your own. That collective visibility is the only way forward. The WNBA? They missed it completely. And now they're playing catch-up. Now the media is asking questions. Now fans are pointing out the hypocrisy. Now people are wondering why a golf league did more to celebrate a basketball player than her own league did. That question isn't going away. Because what happened at the Annika Pro-Am wasn't just a moment. It was a mirror. And the WNBA didn't like what they saw in it. So where do they go from here? They can keep pretending it didn't happen. They can keep framing Caitlin Clark's success as an inconvenience to the team-first narrative. They can keep pushing players who bring just enough attention and politely dim the ones who shine too brightly. Or they can grow up. They can take a hard look at the culture they've created. They can start celebrating their stars loudly. They can realize that unity doesn't mean uniformity, and that success doesn't need to be rationed. Because if they don't, they'll keep getting lapped, not just by the LPGA, but by every other women's league that figures it out first. So let's hear what you think. Did the WNBA drop the ball here? Should they have embraced Caitlin's moment like the LPGA did? Or do you think the response we got was justified? Are fans reading too much into it? Or did the silence speak for itself? Hit that like button if you caught the shade too. Comment below. Are we witnessing a culture shift or a culture clash? Share this with someone who's been side-eyeing the WNBA strategy lately. And subscribe because this isn't just sports. It's the drama, the dynamics, and the messy moments that expose what's really going on behind the curtain.